Ladies and gentlemen, we got a huge trade to announce here between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins involving Taylor Hall and a multitude of different NHL players and prospects. We're going to be talking about it here, and we're going to be breaking down every single part of this trade, so watch till the end for every single bit of detail, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more trade content just like this all throughout the year. You won't want to miss a trade. Stick with us right here. Now, funnily enough, before we got the Kevin Hayes, Tony DeAngelo, Pierre-Luc Dubois trades official at all, we saw a huge trade here between Boston and Chicago, which changes the look and the future of both these teams quite a bit. Now, at the beginning of this NHL offseason, there was a lot of talk about the Boston Bruins, what they would do this offseason, what big changes they can make, but one thing was for sure, there was going to be a player with a higher cap hit that ended up being dealt. It looks like Taylor Hall is the big fish to get off of Boston, and the Chicago Blackhawks are the one to make it happen. Now, initially, Frank Cervelli said this: here in the Bruins are working on a deal that will include sending Taylor Hall to Chicago, waiting on more details. And then, as we saw a little bit later, Frank Cervelli putting out the official details here. To the Boston Bruins will be the rights to two RFAs in Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula, and to the Chicago Blackhawks will be Taylor Hall with the rights to UFA Nick Foligno. Now, I'm not sure why the Blackhawks would really want the rights to Foligno unless they have maybe some security that maybe Foligno might sign there, but Taylor Hall had a 16-team no-trade list, and he didn't have Chicago on it, so there was no complications in this trade. Chicago acquires Taylor Hall, adding Conor Bedard and adding another former first overall pick to the roster. Taylor Hall should be interesting with Chicago, and alongside Bedard, I think it would be honestly a pretty good fit. And as Frank Cervelli mentions, no salary retention on by Boston. This represents a pure salary dump to clear $6 million off the Bruins books. And what was also reported as well is that the Boston Bruins may use this cap space to sign Bertuzzi before free agency opens, before that window officially opens on July 1st. Of course, Bertuzzi is a UFA, but he was massive for the Bruins. In that limited time that he was traded from Detroit to Boston, he was great in that role for the Bruins. In the playoffs was fantastic there too. Taylor Hall was especially good, but it seems like his cap was just too much to stomach, especially for the regular season performances that he's had over the last couple of years. Chicago gets him, and to me, I think with the much more broad ice time, especially playing alongside a talented player like Bedard, he could be in a much better position there. Now let's talk about Taylor Hall here and the fit with the Chicago Blackhawks as well. You can see as a left winger, 6'1", 205 pounds, he instantly becomes the Chicago Blackhawks' best offensive, most consistent player besides Conor Bedard. I mean, at least pedigree-wise, he becomes their most high-profile forward, and it's something that Chicago, we've already heard rumors of them going after a couple of players in this offseason, potentially being active in free agency to build a little bit of a top six around Bedard. Taylor Hall is an excellent addition, and he's a player that I can see why the Bruins wouldn't like to have at $6 million, especially in this position in the lineup. He was a solid player who has gotten better defensively too and has had a great playoffs. You can see just over the last couple of seasons, it was a solid 2022, 61 points in 81 games, but this last year, 36 points in 61 games, 16 goals, only 20 assists in those 61 games. He was great in the playoffs, getting 8 points in 7 games, but it wasn't enough to justify keeping him around, especially considering, again, Bertuzzi and how good he was, and likely how good he will be in the regular season for Boston as well, how healthy he can be. To me, if I had to choose between the two players for Boston, I would choose Bertuzzi, and you consider Taylor Hall's cap hit at $6 million, and for Boston, it makes sense that they would have to they would dump this cap, and it gives them a lot more flexibility for this offseason. For Chicago, they have all the cap in the world, and they will take a player like Taylor Hall, who in some ways could be overpaid, but honestly, I don't even really think so. He's a solid player and has been a pretty consistent guy, even if this last year wasn't great for him in the regular season, but I still think he has the talent to put up great numbers, and I think in Chicago, on a first-line role alongside Bedard, first-line power play, we could see him get back to that 60, 70-point level, in my opinion, and honestly, for Chicago, as a maybe just a slight reclamation project, a player that can bring in and maybe even trade out in a year or two and rise up that value in a big way. Now, of course, they also get Nick Foligno, which will be interesting. We'll see how he fits in, but he was much better for the Boston Bruins this last year. It's interesting that they won't be bringing him back, and I would assume for Foligno, he likely takes more than Boston could afford to bring him back for. But then we go, of course, to the players the Bruins get back in exchange as well, in Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula. Now, let's first talk about Ian Mitchell, who's in a fascinating position, 57th overall back in the 2017 draft, 5'11". He's been in a weird development curve. I mean, he just turned 24 this last year in January. You can see he's had opportunities in the NHL, he's had sustained time in the AHL, and just hasn't really been able to truly maximize it. He's a solid skating offensive defenseman who can make some big mistakes and defensively gets beat a lot, and he's the type of player that I don't really know if he really fits with the Boston Bruins personally, but he's an RFA, and of course the Bruins are always looking for cheap young guns, so maybe he fits into a seventh defenseman role, especially if they're able to give up other players like Matt Grzelcyk off the cap as well. Maybe that's the position he's in, but to me, he's kind of in no man's land. I don't really know how the Bruins would really use him, but he played in the NCAA with Denver with, of course, head coach Jim Montgomery, so maybe there's a fit there, and maybe he's able to get back to that great NCAA level, which he was at in Denver. I mean, you can see he was almost a point per game as a captain there in his last year, solid stats there, so we'll see if he's able to translate that with the Boston Bruins, but I wouldn't exactly bet on it. Then you, of course, got the other defenseman in Alec, who was drafted by the Red Wings and then traded to the Blackhawks, and you can see 22 years old, turning 23 this August, but 6'4", 207 pounds, is a really solid skating defenseman for his size and can use his physicality well. You can see, I think he's developed pretty okay over the last few years. In his first really good AHL season, he got 26 points last year in 41 games. This year, maybe it took a little bit of a step back in terms of that production, but he's the guy that I could see topping out as maybe a 6th guy for the Bruins. Has some great physical size there, can skate solidly, and again, just like for players like Grzelcyk, if they're going to get rid of guys like that, if they're going to get rid of guys like Carlo, regula, I think, could also fit well in that Boston Bruins decor, but maybe fit and stick a little bit more at the NHL level eventually than Ian Mitchell does. But make no mistake, this is not a haul for Taylor Hall. This isn't a package for Boston that is going to be giving you so many great players in the future. This is mostly as a cap dump to get rid of Taylor Hall's contract, to be able to potentially sign Tyler Bertuzzi this offseason. That's the main point of this trade. Alec Regula, I think, is maybe the more likely player to be a mainstay for the Bruins, but even then, there's not a huge likelihood of that. We'll see what ends up happening. They do strengthen their depth in the D, especially in the AHL system, and that is a big thing, but I don't think this is going to be a massive return for Boston just on the pure assets they get back. It's about that cap salary. It's about those savings, and Boston's really searching for it. They got it done here. No salary retention, which is huge for them. But man, the fact that Taylor Hall will be a Chicago Blackhawk is just really weird to think about, man. The fact that he'll be going into a team like Chicago that is just absolutely barren in every single way. But again, alongside Conor Bedard and with Taylor Hall's playmaking and with Conor Bedard's shot, that could be a pretty solid duo on that first line. And even though Chicago still won't be good whatsoever next year and will likely still be in the bottom 3, Taylor Hall helps them a lot. And we could also see them add a couple of free agents as well, depth-wise, to maybe strengthen that second line, perhaps. We'll see what happens. Chicago's in a really unique position, though, this offseason. We'll see how much more they strengthen their roster, but Taylor Hall is definitely an addition they need. I would say in terms of winners, I'm not really sure who wins this trade. I mean, Taylor Hall is nice to have here, Conor Bedard, but to me, for Boston, it really all depends on if they're able to sign Tyler Bertuzzi. If they're able to sign Tyler Bertuzzi, get rid of maybe a couple other contracts and strengthen up maybe that forward group, we'll see if they're able to do that this offseason. But I do like Alec Regula coming back, and those cap savings are huge. To get rid of $6 million is massive, and if they are able to re-sign Bertuzzi at a pretty good cap hit, then I would say they win this trade. But Chicago is also in a unique position. Bedard and Hall will be spectacular together, no doubt. That's a great pairing, and will, unfortunately, probably do a lot of damage against my Dallas Stars this season. I'm just expecting it to happen. Also, one last note I wanted to touch on here with Taylor Hall is also the part about Conor Bedard and both of them being first-round picks. The experience is a huge thing, and with Bedard, you obviously seen first overall picks in the past just get thrown to the wolves, and Bedard is likely going to be in that position. He's likely going to be in that top 6. He's likely going to be on that first line, likely going to be on that top power play. Even though there might be times to shelter him, there is also going to be a lot of times where things might be difficult, and Taylor Hall can also kind of sympathize with that. Of course, being a first-round pick from 2010 and then playing in the Ferry next year, getting 42 points in 65 games. This is a player that's been on the exact same path as Bedard, and although didn't have quite the hype as Bedard, knows what those expectations are like and knows how to deal with them, knows how to get past them, knows how to rise above that. And of course, as a former first overall pick in a much more crazier market even than Chicago and Edmonton especially, he can kind of guide Bedard through those unique stresses, through those unique capabilities that not really a ton of other players really have to deal with. And I think from that experience level, even though he's not crazy old, but I mean, he's going to be turning 32 this November. He's kind of a veteran, Taylor Hall, and that's really scary to actually say, and I hate that I just said that. Taylor Hall is a veteran, but it's the truth, man. He's turning 32 this November, and that type of experience, I think, for Chicago is desperately needed. For Conor Bedard is especially needed, and I think, again, when those tough times come, Taylor Hall could be exactly the type of mentor that Conor Bedard needs, because I don't think it's going to be amazing, elite every single shift from day one. I think there will be times in Bedard's rookie season where he might struggle just a little bit, and that is natural to see. Even the best rookies in the world will struggle throughout stretches, but having a player like Taylor Hall there is especially important. I mean, the Blackhawks could have gone after a couple of free agents here or there, but Taylor Hall, again, brings that unique perspective that I think for Conor Bedard, he won't just appreciate, but need throughout his rookie season, and to me, that is such a smart thing to bring on if you're Chicago. But I want to know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this Taylor Hall trade to the Chicago Blackhawks? Who do you think wins this deal? Do you think it's Chicago getting Taylor Hall? Do you think the savings for the Boston Bruins and maybe the prospects in this deal could sway the Boston Bruins' way? Let us know down below. By the way, no pun intended about the sway and the swayman. I'm sorry for saying that. I'm really sorry. But appreciate you guys for watching today and enjoying the trade breakdown. If you did enjoy, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I, of course, want to see you guys share the video for all the hockey fans you guys know online. Get the trade news out to them and click on this card for all of my trade content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Drink some water, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.